I love that, it was a racist conspiracy theory. Talk about great replacement theory. And then it just takes 10 minutes of talking to someone to be like, yeah, that's actually exactly what we believe.
I'm not against reforming the asylum process.
Okay, but you would agree that as it exists in the status quo, even if we would provide more money into the process, it wouldn't be unusual for the entire process to take over a year.
I don't know what I wouldn't be surprised if that was the number. I
So
don't
then
know the
that would
exact.
by default mean that unless there was major reform, that you would agree the status quo would mean everyone that crosses the border would be allowed to stay. It would be immoral to kick them out, save they commit some violent crime. Because if the process on average takes over a year and it is now
Mhm.
immoral to kick them out regardless of what that process finds, then you would say, okay, by default, it's open border. Anyone that comes across should be allowed to stay.
Well, again, there's probably always going to be exceptions for criminals and people who prove to
Sure,
be
we're
very
taking criminal, like you
undesirable.
commit a murder,
Um,
that's different. We're talking
yeah,
just beyond that.
yeah, just being an ordinary functioning member of society. Yeah, I mean, I would agree that that would be an implication of our current asylum process, but I don't. I'm in favor of probably changing to an incredible extent how our asylum process works. I mean, I don't think that.
But you're agreeing that that's not the way it would work. So by de facto, everyone basically that's came
Yeah.
across, which are tens of millions that came across during Biden era, I don't know the exact number,
Well,
but millions
well,
upon millions that
practically,
came,
yeah. I mean,
all of them
practically
should be allowed to
speaking.
stay unless they've committed crimes, correct? Even
Well,
if
yeah,
they've
you have
received
you
deportation orders if the process took more than a year.
you have to do something about the people. Yeah, you have to do something about the people that are currently here, right?
It
But
would be
again, what I
immoral to
would
kick.
say for
I'm just saying that you could tell me if I'm misrepresenting you. All of these people that came during the Biden Harris administration, much of the time we were told the border was secure and it wasn't that big a problem. Because on average, we could agree that most of them, even if they played out the whole process and they were given a deportation notice, that probably took more than a year. You would say it would be immoral to send any of those people back unless they committed a violent crime or something like that.
yeah, yeah, unless yeah, exactly. Like so, I would say you have to probably, in my view, give some leniency to the. You have to grandfather it in at a certain point. You have to give some leniency to the people that are already here. But when you're talking about the people who are like currently flowing in, that's a totally different discussion. And I think that we would probably agree on certain things
We're
with
not going to
regard
agree
to.
on much because you've already given the game away. So the current administration, the Biden Harris administration that had such a porous border, they all get amnesty. That's your solution. Well, it's immoral at this point to kick them out.
I'm
It's
not hiding that
nonsensical.
ball, Rob. That's a
Right. Well,
position.
I'm not saying it.
I'm
You could
not
be
being
hiding it or
facetious.
not. I don't care. I'm just getting the point out so people could see the absurd nature. And I think you represent quite a common position in the Democratic Party. I think this is absolutely true. Some of them are more duplicitous than you. They're not
The
going to come right
Democratic
out and
Party
say,
is very
actually, we're
pro-immigrant.
for all of the people that came staying here. Would you be for giving those people a pathway to citizenship?
I would say every legal resident is entitled to a similar equitable pathway to citizenship. Yeah, I don't know what that exact path should look like, but um, I think our current system probably works just fine.
I love it. I love that, it was a racist conspiracy theory. Talk about great replacement theory. And then it just takes 10 minutes of talking to someone to be like, yeah, that's actually exactly what we believe.
Well,
We believe
no,
that it's
the
immoral to kick anyone. We understand that the current system would take
oh,
at
Rob,
least a year to resolve. Let
you
me
don't seem to
finish.
know what that is, though. You don't seem to know
Yes,
what the Great Replacement is.
sure I do. I know that you'll claim that it's racist and it has racial undertones. When I say great replacement theory, what I mean is this, that people in both the Democratic and Republican Party want to replace the population of people in this country to perpetually ensure that they win elections by pretending there's not a problem with a porous border. And then once those people come in saying it's immoral to kick them out, and that they ought to be given a pathway to citizenship. And they say that you're racist if you notice this.
Well, yeah. Again, I think that I don't know. But there arguably could be some weird notion of like political replacement that you could have if you were to call it great replacement. But obviously, when people refer to great replacement theory, they're typically talking about the racialized sort of conspiratorial element where people will say that, oh, the Jews or whatever are like, or the liberal elite is like conspiring to let in all these like brown people to like dilute the Aryan like white race or whatever. And obviously, if that's the great replacement that you subscribe to, that's like an incredibly racist. like
Well, right.
theory.
I understand, right, that just like I can make, I don't know if you can see me, I make this okay sign. That's racist, right? That's what we're told by the left. That's racist. That's
But
a white
I'm not
supremacist
part
thing.
I'm not
And
part
then
of
I'll
this
say,
very
that's not what I
vocal
mean by,
left.
and you'll go, well, yes, but what we're talking about is the people you, yes, I understand that people want to besmirch anyone that talks about it is the Democratic plan that they lie about all the time to have open borders, to then say, okay, to lie and say, oh, it's not that open, trust us, to then say, well, those people already came in, so it'd be immoral to kick them out, and then say, oh, and by the way, we should give them a pathway to citizenship. And then when people like me saying, look, there's tantamount to open borders, they're going to allow these people in, they're going to then say it's immoral to kick them out. Then they're going to give them a pathway to citizenship so they could vote, and they're going to overwhelmingly vote Democrat, and I get yelled at. That's racism. That's great replacement theory. Yes, I understand that that's the game. I'm not racist. I don't give a shit. These could all be Norwegians that are coming in. The truth is, the Democrats, this is what I'm talking about with great replacement theory. The Democrats largely want a new voting bloc. They know that if they allow these people in, that they're likely to perpetually vote for Democrats, and so they lie every step of the way. They say, no, 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 the border's not open, and then they say, okay, well, these people that came here, it's immoral to kick them out. And then they say, well, if we're saying they're allowed to stay here, then it
Yeah.
would be immoral to not give them some sort of pathway to citizenship. That's the game. They could have said, what they could have said in 2021, 2022 is, yeah, we're leaving millions of people in, and unfortunately our process is such that it'll take them at least a year to resolve this, and that means it'll be immoral to kick any of them out, even if our courts say that they should be deported, and we are going to give them a pathway to citizenship. They could have been honest and said that, but they didn't. They lied and accused people that were correctly calling that out of being racist. Are there
Yeah, I
people
mean,
that are does
um,
potentially
well,
like a Kamala Harris voter like Richard Spencer, you know, a white nationalist? Does that Kamala Harris voter, Democrat Richard Spencer, does he possibly have a problem with border policy because he doesn't want to see the white race diluted? Maybe that Democrat Kamala Harris supporter Richard Spencer, maybe he has a problem with that. I don't see that as a reason to besmirch or deflect from the actual policies that Democrats are pushing, which you've articulately outlined here.
well, I don't. Yeah, I don't know how this became a great replacement debate. I'm not part of like the particularly scoldy part of the left. I just happen to think that there's a great replacement, argument out there that's very racist. Republicans have been saying for like, I don't know, literally 30, 40 years or something at this point that, oh, the Democrats want all these immigrants to come in so that they become citizens and then vote for
That's
Democrats
what you
forever.
want.
No, that's not what I want. I have what I believe to be a compelling moral case to let in immigrants and to allow the immigrants that are here to stay.
Okay, your
I don't.
rationale for why you want them is irrelevant to the practical application, what it'll be. Regardless of why you came to the conclusion, you want to allow all these people to stay and give them a pathway to citizenship that will mean that they have the right to vote, and they happen to overwhelmingly vote for the political party that you would want.
We're in coalition politics, right? So there's not like a perfectly sliced out Econoboi party that is going to fit,
Of
exactly.
course. But you're a Democrat. You voted
Hey,
Democrats,
no,
right?
I
Yeah, of
no, I'm
course.
not.
I agree with.
Well, do you agree with everything Trump's going to do? Like,
No,
probably
of
not.
course not.
Fucking obviously,
Of
right?
course
So
not.
like,
But if I was like, but if I was to say to you, right, of course you would agree with that, and I don't think you agree with everything Kamala Harris or the Democrats do. But if I was to say, well, if all of a sudden Trump's like, we're gonna leave all these people in from Turkey or from Hungary, we're gonna leave all these people in, right, and they're all super fucking MAGA. They're just like, and Trump's like. And I'm like, I don't see that. What do you mean he's leaving them in? I don't see that. What the fuck are you talking about? That's racist. You just hate Hungarians. That's racist. How dare you say that? And you'd be like, but Rob, he's doing it. We can see the numbers. We fucking say, I'm like, that's racist. That's racist, dude. How can you say that? And then Trump's like, and it'd be immoral now to kick them out. And let's give them a pathway to citizenship. They're all going to vote. And there's like 100,000 when we place them all in Pennsylvania, a swing state. Oh, now they're all going to vote. And they're all going to vote MAGA. Do you think you would say to me if I was like, yeah, that's morally what we have to do? Do you think you'd say, well, Rob, it would be unfair to say that these people would vote for the party you want because after all, you're never completely adherent to any political party? Of course not. Yes, I take ipso facto that you're not someone who agrees 100% with the Democratic Party. In fact, no human being is unless you're an automaton. I know you enough to know that you're not, but you overwhelmingly vote Democrat. And these people coming in,
Right.
if given the right to vote, will overwhelmingly help push the political party that you tend to agree
Yeah, I mean,
with more.
I can't evaluate obviously in an alternative universe what that would look like. Now, what I can tell you is that immigrants or like people from immigrant backgrounds, and typically speaking, we're talking about Latino immigrants, obviously, in the back of our heads, and those people have come to this country, and it's not totally clear to me that they're, especially after the exit polls were published from this past election, that they're like a particularly like overwhelmingly left-wing group, and the trends seem to be quite the opposite, as a matter of fact. And
But
I'm
those are legal.
holding.
Those are people that are here legally. Of course, you're right. A lot of people.
Well,
For
right, but I'm
example,
talking.
for
But these
example,
people are all part of the same communities, right? So I would expect it to be the case that in
that's not true at all.
well,
You
no,
could
no,
s-
but
Go
these
ahead, go
well, I'm
ahead, and then
saying,
I'll explain to you why it's not true. Go ahead.
well, these people are part of legal immigrants and undocumented immigrants of Latino heritage occupy extremely similar spaces in this Venn diagram of a country, right? Like very, very large overlap. And so,
But
so let me just finish. And so the only reason I say that is because, in my view, it seems like the trend of things is that these Hispanic immigrants are trending conservative, away from my political
legal
beliefs.
immigrants. It would be the
I
equivalent of saying
understand.
this. It would be the equivalent of this. Someone flees Qatar, right? Because they don't like some of the Islamic policies there. Now they come from the country of Qatar, right? And they fled that oppression, and maybe they're Muslim, but they're very apolitical. Like they don't think Islam should direct our politics, and they like the freedom that the United States offers. And then all of a sudden, 50,000 refugees from Qatar come in who want Sharia law. It would be like saying, oh, well, that first immigrant that came comes from a very similar place. They came from the same country, and therefore they must share similar values. No. In fact, we could see that some of the people most antithetical to illegal immigration are actual Hispanics. Because they see the devastation. They know that they came here the fair way. They have different values many of the times. And even if you could say, well, someone who comes from Mexico or comes from, some South American countries traditionally would tend to be more Catholic or tend to be more Christian. And so culturally, they would tend to have more social values. They're still going to vote in a way that they think ensures their economic viability and their ability to stay in the country. So they're certainly going to vote for the party that they think will give them more benefits.
I mean, I get the
and give
point,
them
Rob.
more
You're
of an
just
ability to
saying,
stay. I don't think saying,
I
well, because they both came from the same country, they have similar cultural values, therefore we don't know how they vote. I think that's asinine. We know how they
no,
would
I
vote.
don't. I don't think. No, I don't. I don't think that that's. Basically, you're just making the argument that you think that basically legal and undocumented immigrants of the same cultural background, wherever it is, national background, you're just saying that these are actually two very different groups of people in terms of their political persuasion. And I just
Let me
don't
just
happen to
okay, but I'll just
that.
ask you as bluntly as possible. If
Yeah.
Biden waved a magic wand and the courts allowed it to occur and every illegal in this country was allowed to vote in the 2024 election, what percentage do you think would have voted for Donald Trump?
I would say I think that the exit polls that I saw for Hispanics was what was it? I think Kamala got like 55% of the Hispanic vote, and so I would say that this group of people that you're talking about, this like 10 million some group of people,
10
or I
million.
guess
That's how
about,
many illegals you think are here?
you
Wow,
could tell
what
me
a
a different number,
disingenuous.
but
That answer was disingenuous in a litany of ways. 10 million is completely underselling the problem. The idea that
well,
just because someone shares an ethnicity or a language with someone means that they would vote the same way. You know the answer, and it belies your integrity to lie
I didn't even
about this
finish my
answer.
answer, Rob.
You think that okay? So you okay?
You
Then finish your
interrupted
answer.
me.
Go ahead.
all that I said was that I think about 55% of Hispanic people voted for Kamala and about 45% for Trump. And I would say that the undocumented immigrants that are here of a similar background would probably lean, maybe like 58 to 42 or something, like probably slightly to the left, but I don't think it would be
That's laughable. You're
like
fucking
radically
laughable.
to the left.
We're gonna vote for Donald Trump, the guy that promises he's gonna deport us if we get here. Fucking laughable. I mean, I don't know what to say. Like,
that,
it's stuff like yes, that's what Trump was running on.
Rob,
That's what
Rob,
Trump
these
was
people
running on.
occupy the same households a lot of
Who
time. Like you
gives
literally
a
have.
shit?
I'm
You're,
trying to use the example,
it
Rob.
is. It is. It is completely.
You
it is
occupy
completely,
the same household as an undocumented family member, and you still vote for the guy who's gonna deport all the you'll see you literally see videos of undocumented immigrants for
The
like
people in the chat know you're full of shit. Even the people that are traditionally Democrats, you're making a fool of yourself. They are not going to vote for the guy that is running on the promise, we're going to kick you out of the country. It's a joke that you're even pretending. And what it does is, I don't know why you do stuff like this sometimes. It just makes it look so bad for you. It makes it look so bad. It makes it look so bad for you that you're willing to die on a hole that is so that's so absurd as this. It's fucking absurd. It shows that you're being completely bad faith. You're telling me that you think 40% of illegals, if they had the right to vote, would have voted for Donald Trump that said, we're going to deport you. That's your argument.
Yeah.
It's a fucking joke.
No, because you have no idea how ill-informed the average voter is, Rob. Like, I don't think that people have this very robust view of things. Again, that's why you can watch news channels interview undocumented immigrants that said, oh, yeah, I'd support Trump and, he's not going to deport me. I'm a working immigrant. Like, he likes working immigrants.
It's a joke. Everyone can see it. I guess we'll leave the conversation.
Well, what do you think the percentage would be?
I would think that it would
90%?
It would be close to 90. It's probably a fair number. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's a wild assumption. But anyway, that's.
That's absolutely hilarious. I'm willing to take that. I'm willing to take that argument to the bank. Econoboi, who's well respected in the field of economics, might I remind people, well respected in the field of economics, didn't foresee the lockdowns causing the economic pandemonium that we've seen. But nonetheless, well respected in the field of economics, he believes that it'd be about 40% of illegals would have voted for Donald Trump.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a joke. I'm willing to take that.
Rob,
we'll clip that out. We'll clip it out.
Well,
absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I know, amazing to your audience, but no,
even lefties in the audience are like, this is a fucking joke. Like,
look, I don't like, for instance, right? I don't like, like extremely conservative, like right-wing immigrants, right? So, in a sense, I very much disagree with their politics, but I would never argue for instituting like a politically charged test to, determine the political ideology.
No one suggests.
No, the reason I'm saying that is because I'm not, my stance on immigration does not really have to do with the politics of the people who are coming into the country.
I understand you saying that.
For a number of reasons.
I understand that. That's going to be the argument. It just happens to work that way for you. I get it. And maybe you're being honest. That's fine. I'm not speaking to what your values may be. Anyone that comes here, it would be immoral to kick them out. That may be your values. Those are bad values. But nonetheless, that could be your reasoning. That's fine. I'm saying I can't get into your head necessarily. What I can see is that the outcome of that would be to benefit your side politically. That I can see, regardless if that's your motivation or not.